Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to the Money Down Pod. We are back live. That is my guy, Sean White. You can follow him on Twitter at DumpsterFireFan, myself at Kayvon_sports. Thank you so much for tuning in wherever you are, however you're listening. Beautiful, beautiful day here in North Carolina for myself. Sean, I hope you guys are having some good weather up there in Maine. And I don't know how you don't have a smile on your face right now if you're listening, because it's football season. Every team is at camp. And there's no better way to start than talking some fantasy football now that football is right around the corner. Today, we're going to break down our top running backs and wide receivers, PPR, non-PPR. We're just going to go in a deep discussion on some of the running backs and receivers that we love, and some of the receivers that we're not so high on, and just kind of how they mix into our top 10. Just a good discussion. If you want to tune in to this discussion, let us know your top running backs and receivers on Twitter at MoneyDownPod, or just comment on the YouTube page if you are watching there. Sean, how you doing, man? I know you're excited as I am.
Yeah, I'm very excited. This is a great time of year to get these rankings down, because we're going to have some drafts coming up here soon. You know, you start to get the drafts going preseason in there. You want to make sure you avoid the preseason injury bug so you don't draft somebody that then gets hurt. But that's a good thing about the NFL. They've gone away from playing people in the preseason a lot more, so it actually helps with our fantasy football stuff. So it's time to get the rankings out, really discuss this stuff going on. And I mean, I'm up here in Maine. It's a hot day, no central AC, so I'm in the bedroom right now. If y'all hear the AC in the background at any time, sorry about that. But I'll be in North Carolina with Kayvon here next month, so I'll be able to enjoy the central air again and kind of be out there in that humidity more so that heat, instead of just this heat everywhere in Maine where you can't escape it.
It's stupid humid here, man. It's stupid
Oh,
humid
I'm
here,
sure.
but I still love it. All right, yeah, let's get into it, man. So look, this year to me is an odd year. You know, I think in fantasy football, it feels, and maybe it's just because we're just getting back into the thick of things, but it feels like an odd year. You know, I've done a couple mock drafts already, and usually in fantasy football, in my opinion, the first couple of picks to me, I think, are usually set in stone. Like, obviously, you have a couple people that go different here and there, but usually you can point out and say, listen, this guy's one, this guy 2 or 3, this guy 3 or 2. I think this year, while I do think there's consensus 1 and 2 and 3 are up there, I think it's different. And the reason why I think it's different is because I think that we're seeing wide receivers go super high because of the year that some of these wide receivers had. Usually you don't see that in fantasy unless you get some wide receiver nut or something that just an inclination to take them very high. So I think that's kind of changing how we look at some of these running backs. Like, to me, obviously, PPR, non-PPR, I think Jonathan Taylor is my number one. I think he's the best running back. I loved him. He won me my league last year in a league I was in. I think Jonathan Taylor, hands down, is awesome. Do you have him number one, or do you not?
Yeah, he's consensus 1 for standard and PPR for me. He's the number 1 back in my opinion. But I want to touch on what you're saying real quick about the wide receivers climbing up. Really good point right there. Real strange year we have going on, especially with ESPN rankings, other fantasy sites rankings. Not really a consensus pick. We're seeing picks all over the place. And really, these rankings are going to really flesh out a lot differently for people just because the receivers are moving up. We haven't seen this many receivers up that high in a draft that I've ever seen. The closest thing we saw was Antonio Brown going 1 a few years back when he was on the Steelers, but that was just one receiver that would then be followed by 5 running backs. This is a strange year, man. I can't wait for it.
It's very strange. It's super strange. I mean, we are literally seeing receivers go 3, 4, 2 overall in the draft. And I get it. They did so well, but it makes this running back position so fascinating, because not only do you have running backs that did really good, like a Jonathan Taylor, you also have running backs that didn't have a great season, but their potential is there, like a Dalvin Cook, like a Christian McCaffrey. Like, those guys, if healthy, at the end of the year, they could be, Jesus, this guy went 5, 6 overall, and he could win you your league. Who is your number 2 running back? Mine is Austin Eckler, PPR. I have Austin Eckler at number 2. I love Austin Eckler. I know that they drafted a running back. I still think Austin Eckler gets the boat of all the carries, the touches. I just think he's perfect for their offense. I love Austin Eckler.
Do you want to just go down and do PPR and then we'll switch to standard since our
Yeah.
rankings will be different? Okay, let's do it that way. That's perfect. Eckler's my number 3 for PPR, and I agree with you on your points right there that you're making. My number 2 is Dalvin Cook in PPR. I actually think he's going to catch a lot more passes this year in that O'Connell offense, for, coming over from the McVay system. I think he's going to catch a ton of passes in this offense now. I don't think they're going to be a run-first team anymore. I think they're going to kind of go to a more 50-50 balance out there. So I think Dalvin Cook has huge upside, especially in a PPR format, half PPR format, to where he's going to have that top rushing game, but he's also going to be catching a lot more passes and be involved in the screen game, maybe some out of the slots. I like Dalvin for my number 2 PPR running back.
Yeah, so I get that. And Dalvin's my number 4. I still have Henry at number 3, PPR and regular. And it's because Henry has been so good, the PPR doesn't matter. We know Henry doesn't catch a lot of balls. We get that. But he's been so good running the ball that in PPR, it still impacts it enough where his yards are still high enough and his touchdowns are still high enough. And listen, I get it. He just had his first big injury of his year. But I'm not doubting Henry, and the reason why is the Titans aren't doubting Henry. The way the Titans are building their team still is strictly based around Henry. They have all the belief in the world that Henry is still going to be that top guy, and that's why I'm not moving him. I don't have him at number 2 like I would, like a lot of people do, or like some people would usually, or even number 1. I think JT and Eckler are the clear 1 and 2 for me. But I have Henry at number 3, regular and PPR, just because I still believe in Henry. It could be. I mean, listen, I'm not drafting him in all my leagues, and there is definitely an alert next to his name because it could be a season where he gets injured. But we haven't seen that from Henry. So it's not fair to assume he's just going to get injured when it happened one time so far.
So I actually have the biggest discrepancy in Henry from PPR to standard because I think standard he's top tier. PPR, the reason I'm doing this is because I think I have him at 5 in PPR. And it's because I think the 4 that I have ahead of him are going to dominate the rushing attempts for their team while also catching a boatload of balls. So I think the pass catching ability is going to offset a little bit of the heavy Henry running. I don't know if Henry's going to rush for another 2,000 yards, 1,800 like that this year. I do think he's still going to be a top tier back and definitely have the attempts. I just don't know if that running game is going to be as dominant just the older he gets. And I know that's hard to say. I just really am much higher on these 4 players ahead of him in a PPR format. But in standard, obviously, when we switch over to that, he's my number 2 back there behind Jonathan Taylor. So that's kind of where that lane is that I have for him. So moving on to some of those backs, I already said Jonathan Taylor, Cook, and Eckler. That's my top 3 PPR. My number 4 is actually Najee Harris. And the reason why I have Najee there is going to dominate rushing attempts on a run-first offense with the Steelers. They invested in their O-line, so they're going to run it a little harder. And both Pickett and Trubisky, I feel like both are kind of going to be a little bit of a check down Charlie group. So I think Harris is going to get that volume, especially in a PPR set, getting those points off of each catch, even if they don't get any yards. He did it with Big Ben last year. I think it's going to be even more of a force. He's going to lead that offense. So I like Najee Harris at that 4 spot.
Yeah, so Najee's my number 5. Dalvin Cook is my number 4. So my 5 is JT, Eckler, Henry, Cook, and Najee. That's my top 5 right there.
All of them same, just different rank. That's right on schedule.
So and everything you said is right. Look, Najee caught 74 balls last year. It's a hell of amount of catches right there. And I do believe it's kind of what Trubisky did when he was with the Bears. And Steelers fans are hoping that they get that Trubisky when the year they went to the playoffs. I think it was 2016, the double doink, or 2017, one of those. And they were dumping the ball off like crazy. I believe that same thing's going to happen. I completely agree with you. The only thing that worries me a little bit about Najee Harris is I just worry sometimes with his running ability. And I know it sounds crazy to say that because he's such a good runner, but I actually think he's a better pass catcher. And I think his running, I think that the Steelers' offensive line is is a problem. And I know they did some upgrades this year. I think it's a problem. And I think defenses are going to sell out to stop the run until they really believe that Trubisky, or if what's his name, beats him out. Yeah, if he beats him out, then I think they're going to, either one, they're going to say, try and beat us. And until they actually can see one of those quarterbacks beat them, they're going to do everything they can, load the box to stop Najee. And that goes into your point of him catching more balls, which I totally believe. I think that totally is going to happen. So that's why I have Najee below Dalvin Cook. I think Dalvin Cook is going to be a phenomenal runner this year. I love him in this scheme that they're going to put out the Vikings this year. So I have Dalvin Cook, I have Henry, I have those guys ahead of Najee. But don't get me wrong, I love Najee, but I have him number 5.
Yeah. So I'm going to move on to 6 because I completely agree with what you're saying there. Like I said, we just have the slightly different rankings, which makes sense. Like, it's hit and miss with how people fantasy rank. And that's a great point. I love how Kayvon is ranking Henry way ahead on the running just because he's going to make so much running. Whereas I'm looking more at some of these pass catchers. I think they're just going to catch a boatload of passes. So it's 2 good ways to look at things when we're looking at fantasy right there, to look at that. So number 6 for me, I don't know if you have him here because I'm curious. It's Christian McCaffrey because I don't really know where to put him that good. Yeah, two years of injuries, but man, he could technically be running back 1, man, if he stayed healthy and they use him the way they have in the past. But man, those injuries, once you get those 2 in a row, you really start to doubt people. I mean, look at Saquon now. Saquon's way down on the list. Like, you can't even rely on Saquon to be a high RB2 like right now. But the way CMC plays, I feel like they're going to put him in the slot a little bit. He's definitely got some check down quarterbacks that can get him the ball. And, I mean, they're still going to run him too. So I think he's going to have the volume. It's just, can he stay healthy? That's the big concern there with McCaffrey this year.
So you talked about Henry as your big discrepancy. McCaffrey from PPR to non-PPR is a massive discrepancy. I have him at number 6 in PPR. I have him all the way down at number 9, and I even considered him putting him at number 10 in regular because I believe, and I could be wrong and eat my words on this, but I am worried about the injury factor, and I believe he could be a total factor in the passing game. I'm worried about him running between the tackles, man. I'm worried about. I think McCaffrey is such an elusive pass catcher, a good pass catcher, that he still can be top tier at catching the football. I just don't know with these injuries how well he's going to be able to continue to run the football. So that's why I have him at number 6 PPR, but I have him drop down big time in regular. My number 7, I am extremely high on this guy, man. You talked about how McCaffrey could end up being a number 1. I think this guy could win a championship for you, and it's Joe Mixon. Look, I understand Joe Mixon, the Bengals have a lot of other weapons, and that's the one reason why I have Mixon at number 7 and not higher, because I don't know how important he is going to be all the time. He's very important in that offense. I don't know how all the time he's going to be important in that. But I think Mixon, with Joe Burrow and the amount of pressure that Burrow, Chase, and Higgins are going to take away from Mixon. When Mixon is healthy towards the end of last year, man, he was dominant. He looked so good catching the ball and running the ball. And I think that they're going to try and take it, at least early on in the season. They might switch off on this, but I think that they're going to try and take some pressure off of Burrow's shoulders early on. And I think they're going to try and go to a run-heavy attack. They're obviously going to, when you have those type of weapons, they're obviously going to sling it out. But I don't think they want to keep having Burrow just force feed the ball all the time. I think they're really going to try and make Mixon the vocal point of that offense for a little bit. And I think Mixon has incredible upside. But I have him at number 7 because all of those other weapons, they're so good, you can't overlook them.
So Mixon is 8 and 8 for me in standard and PPR. He's both the same ranking. And the reason why I don't have any move on that is because I do think they're going to probably put Samaje Perine out there a lot more in that third down role. So I don't know exactly how many passes he's going to catch, but he's going to be a solid option for just running the ball. And, man, Mixon's had such a crazy fantasy career for, like, fantasy football. Some years he's that second-round running back you take, and he just doesn't perform, and you never have any production out of him. And then there's, like, 2 years that you take him in the second round, and he might win the league for you because he's that good. So he's right there at that 8 spot for me, right there in the second round where he always is. And we'll see if he's going to win the league or kind of fall back a little bit. But the reason why he's 8 is because it's 7 for PPR, and he's going to be a lot higher in standard for me. But at 7, I have to go with Nick Chubb just because of the volume he's going to get in Cleveland. And even though he does share a backfield with Kareem Hunt, who's also a beast and a very good fantasy play, especially in PPR, Nick Chubb's just a beast, man, and they're going to hand the ball to him a ton. And especially when Watson misses whatever amount of games he has, he's going to carry the ball a ton. But once Watson comes back, it's going to open up that run game a lot more. So I really do like Nick Chubb this year. He's one of my favorites in standard, but he's number 7 for me in PPR.
I love Nick Chubb in standard. I don't love him as much in PPR. He just doesn't catch the ball much. And for that, this is going to be kind of crazy to some. I have Aaron Jones up there at number 8. And this is another massive discrepancy for me because Aaron Jones isn't in my top 10 in standard, but he's at number 8 in PPR because, and Sean, you actually alluded to this on a show that we did the other day, and I think you're 1,000% right on it. Aaron Jones is going to catch a shit ton of balls this year. He might not even run the ball that much, but he is going to be maybe the number 1 go-to playmaker for Aaron Rodgers out of the backfield with Devontae Adams gone. I see Aaron Jones being a massive weapon in the pass game. The only reason why I'm worried is because of A.J. Dillon. I like A.J. Dillon. I think A.J. Dillon's a powerful running back. I think the Packers like A.J. Dillon, and I think A.J. Dillon's going to get a ton of reps in that offense, especially just running the ball. We all know A.J. Dillon's not going to get the catches, which is why I have Jones so high up in PPR, but not very high up in standard. But when it comes to PPR, when it comes to catches and touchdowns, I think we're going to see Aaron Jones very high on the list this year in those 2 categories.
Yeah, I have Aaron Jones at 9, so that's right around the same spots we're looking at there. And it's the same reason that I had mentioned on that last pod. I think he's going to line up wide a lot. Wide in the slot, on end of rounds, just getting the ball in any passing situation. I think he's going to be a go-to guy for Rodgers, like you said. So completely agree there. He's going to be a PPR stud this year, I think. And I actually think the amount of receiving yards and touchdowns he's going to get is actually going to translate to standard pretty well. But he's right there knocking on the door of that top 10 for standard. But I agree with you. It's kind of hard to put him in that top 10 just because you don't know about the rushing yards. But man, oh man, if he can just get that 800 rushing yards rating there, that's 7 to 8, and then you add those receiving yards and touchdowns, he's going to be a beast to watch too. But PPR for sure, he's going to be great. Number 10, I'm going to have like kind of a cop-out answer because I'm going to tell you 2 people. If Kamara doesn't get suspended more than 4 games, I like him a lot, but that suspension is going to hurt him. And he's a guy that I don't have on my standards list, but on my PPR, you always got to have him. The offense runs through him. He's a lot like that McCaffrey area, but he actually plays like he's healthy. But we can almost guarantee he's probably getting popped for 2 to 4 is what I would assume just based off of previous punishments. So instead of having him at 10 and worrying about the suspension, I actually like DeAndre Swift this year a ton for the Lions. He was their 3rd down guy and their lead back for a while. And until he got hurt later in the year, he was like a top 3 fantasy running back scorer from like weeks 10 to 14 or so until he got hurt.
Yep.
So I like him coming into it. I think he's going to have a big, big year too, and he's a high upside play. I really like him, especially in PPR, catching those dump-off passes from Jared Goff when he's under pressure.
Yep, that's actually really funny. I have Swift at number 10 too, and I have Kamara at number 9. I don't love the Kamara at number 9. I'm not high on Kamara, but literally just because of everything you said, it's just he's so elusive. It's hard not to put him on there. But I'll be honest with the listeners out there, I don't know how much I'll be drafting Kamara this year. There's just something about what's going on there, and I think that they're going to air the ball out a lot, man. I think that Jameis is going to use those weapons that they have. I mean, they went and got Landry. They went and got Olave. They now have Michael Thomas back. I think the Saints are going to air the ball out a lot, and that does benefit Kamara in the pass game, which is why I put him in my top 10. But standard, he's very worrisome, and I don't know how much I'll be drafting him. One person that I almost put in there is Leonard Fournette. I just think Leonard Fournette with Brady is perfect. The reason I didn't put him in there is just because I think that all of these guys have a little bit more upside than Fournette. But when it comes to the touchdowns and just strictly the ability of being the safety net for Tom Brady, we have seen in the past how that right there will get you paid and will get you a lot of yards and touchdowns. And Leonard Fournette is a great safety net. We saw Brady use him. I think he had eight rushing touchdowns, two catching touchdowns last year. I think he had 500. He had 454 receiving yards, 812 rushing yards. That's a damn good fantasy season there. I don't know if we get that again because I think Brady has some more weapons this time, but I like Fournette right outside that top 10.
Yeah, so I was going to say before we switch to standard, is there any are there any running backs that you're looking at that are going to be some PPR stars that maybe you worry more about standard a little bit? Maybe some PPR players that will crack the top 15 that you really like. Obviously, I think there's two that come to mind that I want to get your opinion on. Obviously, everyone knows Kareem Hunt. That's probably the biggest discrepancy of any of these backs. In standard, you really worry about him, but in PPR, the dude's maybe a running back too, just because he gets the ball so much in the pass game. The other one I like to mention is Travis Etienne for the Jags. I think he's going to catch a ton of passes, be out in the slot, be a safety valve. I think PPR, he might be a stud this year, whereas standard you worry about his carries. I think he's going to really catch a ton of balls and be a high PPR scorer.
Yeah, I can't disagree with either of those. I love both of those. I also think Javonte Williams. Now, I think he's more of a standard, but I think Javonte can impact the passing game, and I think we saw him do that a little bit last year. I like Javonte Williams in that cusp of the top 15 as well. He could have a big role where he ends up putting you in the playoffs type of thing, but you're spot on. Travis Etienne especially, because he's not getting as much recognition because they still have James Robinson there, even though James Robinson got hurt. I think Etienne could be someone you take later on in the rounds that ends up saying, holy hell, how did I get this guy in X round? And he's helping you go to the playoffs. So no doubt about that.
Yeah. Also, another one to throw out there that I wanted to say, Michael Carter. He was actually solid last year as the Jets starting back. He's going to be the third down guy now, the switching guy with Breece Hall. And you know those Shanahan scheme philosophers that LaFleur is up there with the Jets. They like to use multiple backs. I think Michael Carter is kind of going to be the pass-catching sub-end guy. I think he's going to be solid, especially in PPR.
No doubt about that. All right, let's switch over to non-PPR here. We don't have to really go in depth on all these because we kind of hit on it, but just to kind of show everybody some of the discrepancies we have in those. Look, so my top 5 PPR was Jonathan Taylor, Eckler, Henry, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, and Najee Harris. That was my top 5 right there. For non-PPR, I have Jonathan Taylor, Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, and Najee Harris. So literally, my 5 is the exact same as my other 5.
Yeah, mine switches a bit, I believe, because I actually have Chubb up in there at 5 in standard because I have
Chubb at 6.
Okay, yeah. So I have Jonathan Taylor at 1, Derrick Henry at 2. I have Dalvin Cook at 3, followed by Eckler at 4, and then Chubb at 5, with Najee following Chubb there at 6.
Gotcha. Okay. So I have Chubb at 6, and I respect Chubb at 5. That's good. Any ones that you have in your top 10 that are either way down or out of it from non-PPR?
Non-PPR, I don't have Kamara even sniffing it at all. Or Kamara, I don't have him sniffing it. And I definitely have McCaffrey dropping all the way down to 10 in the difference. Just because, like I said, when you're not accounting the pass catching reps, you really worry about him just being able to sustain runs for that long and really stay healthy this year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Again, I said it with McCaffrey. He could be awesome in the passing game. I worry with him running. Same with Aaron Jones. I'm a little bit worried about Aaron Jones in the running game too. I don't have him as high. I think the biggest one that the listeners should focus on here is Nick Chubb. I think Nick Chubb is the big discrepancy. I mean, Nick Chubb caught like 20 balls last year. He's not a pass catcher, but man, that guy can run the ball so well. I mean, Sean, would you be shocked if he led the year in rushing yards? I wouldn't be shocked one bit.
I really think that he has a chance to do that. The Browns have one of the best O-lines there is. They're without Deshaun for anywhere from 2 to 8, and they're going to feed him the ball. He's definitely going to be up there for sure.
Exactly. So I think that Chubb could be a monster, an absolute monster in the rushing game. Really, really love that. I want to talk about a sleeper here. Someone that I think outside the top 10 could easily break into the top 10. I love this guy, man. Now, the only reason I'm a little bit worried with him is because of the quarterback change, but Elijah Mitchell, I think, is awesome. I think he is an awesome running back for Kyle Shanahan's scheme. The only thing is, I think that, let me put it this way. Trey Lance started one game last year. He showed in 5, and the guy ran for over 182 yards. Trey Lance, for you betting people out there, his over-under rushing prop is 500. I have already hammered the over on that. Trey Lance is going to easily rush for over 500 yards. That's my only pause. Is he going to take away carries from Elijah Mitchell? Other than that, I am so high on Elijah Mitchell because of the scheme fit and because of the way Kyle Shanahan uses these running backs. What are your thoughts on Elijah Mitchell?
I like Elijah Mitchell. I'm really nervous about the Shanahan curse, as you might can call it. Every back he ever gets injured in year 2 because they get beat up so hard. And usually McCaffrey and Henry was the best at it because he did it for 3 or 4 years. But eventually those carries, they just wear on your body, man, and you just get hurt. You can't. It just happens. Man, these Shanahan backs, it takes 1 year of getting hit like that, and they're out. And I'll tell you what, he actually had to carry it a ton last year because all their backups was getting hurt. Jeff Wilson missed time. Trey Sermon missed time. A lot of these people missed time. They have Wilson back. They have Sermon back, and they drafted a running back in round 3. I'm more concerned not just that he's going to be splitting time with Lance, but he's also going to split time with them or maybe miss time. That's my one worry with Elijah Mitchell. But other than that, I think he's the best back of that group, and he's the back I would want to draft. And I think he's going to be successful. It's just going to be how many games does he play and how many touches does he get that worries me.
That's a fair point. Anyone you have on your list?
Actually, let me give you a little sleeper. Talking about that Shanahan scheme, I really like Breece Hall.
Who?
I really like Breece Hall with the Jets.
Yeah,
I like Breece Hall with the Jets a lot. I think they're going to try to run the ball more to ease Zach Wilson a little bit. They actually upgraded their O-line some, so I could see Breece Hall being a big-time playmaker. The funny thing is, you mentioned Mostert. I really like Mostert, man. It's just him and Edmonds. That's such a tangled backfield. I just don't know what to do with that Dolphins backfield at all. Let's talk real quick about that. What are some committees that worries you? So obviously Washington's committee, I can't untangle anything going on with that. And I really, Javonte Williams would have been ranked probably number 6 or 5 or 6 in standard if they hadn't brought Melvin Gordon back, man. That's one worry I have with Javonte.
So I'm not as worried with Melvin Gordon. I think Javonte, and this could not happen, but I think Javonte should take the leap this year that makes him the clear better running back. Could be wrong. He might not take the leap, but he is way too talented to be held back. I think that Gordon is getting to this point in his career where, but it's something to worry. It's something to watch. There's no doubt about that. That is definitely one you need to circle. I just really am banking on Javonte stepping up and running away with that. The Washington one, I'm going far enough to say I wouldn't draft either of those guys or any of them. I wouldn't Washington to me, and just the way Ron Rivera uses his guys, the way it seems like sometimes Ron Rivera will wake up and be like, I don't like that guy today, and he'll use someone else. Like that to me is an issue. What about Seattle? Because Seattle's fascinating, man, because you saw Rashad Penny and what he did towards the end of the year, and it's like, oh my, he actually kind of looks good for once, but then it's Rashad Penny, he always gets hurt. They went and drafted Kenneth Walker, who I loved out of college. I really, really liked Kenneth Walker out of college, but how can you trust anything Pete Carroll's going to do? I don't know if I can get my hands on any of that, and that sucks because I really want to get my hands on Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Kenneth Walker's a beast, man. But, dude, Rashad Penny was probably, the leading rusher the last 5 games last year? He was insane. But then again, you got to worry about Penny getting hurt like he has every year. So that's the big caution there. Honestly, I think unless you can pull a steal with Kenneth Walker later in the draft, I think you got to leave it alone, man, because it's just too much there. I have another one that I want to ask you personally about. What do you make of this Falcons backfield? Because we know Arthur Smith wants to run the ball. What do we make of the Falcons backfield this year? We had Cordell Patterson having that breakout fantasy year last year, but I mean, can he repeat that? And who's his competition for carries and plays there? And do you like him better in PPR or non PPR?
Yeah, listen, the Falcons backfield, and it's not even because of competition. It's just that because, to be honest, they don't really have anyone. Like, look, Cordell's going to be the guy. He's going to be the number one guy. He's going to be the guy that they really try and use the most. And I like him way more in PPR because he's going to catch balls a lot more. And I actually do think he can start off the season well. Like, I would not be shocked if you get 2-3 weeks of Cordell Patterson winning you your league, like that, winning you your week, like your week. He goes off like he did, and then he falls down, falls back to earth. I just don't think he is built to be a 24/7 running back that is going to go the whole season. And because of that, and because I don't really love anyone behind him, I think the Falcons backfield is a stay away. Unless you can get great value on Patterson, draft Patterson, but make sure you have someone ready to replace him if he gets injured or if they move away from him, because, dude, he is not a 24/7 running back. He is not a 3-down running back. But they are going to use him, Sean, a lot in the passing game. I've seen reports all out of Falcons camp that Patterson looks great, that Patterson's in great shape. He's happy to be back in Atlanta, and that they're going to use him in the passing game. The issue is what you said. Smith wants to pound the ball. I don't know if we have a guy that can do that, man. So I think he's going to try and pound it with Patterson, and I think it's going to overload Patterson and cause maybe an injury or just cause a burnout type of situation, and that's what I worry with. But to start off the season, I'm pretty high on Patterson.
Yeah, so that's great insight there from a Falcons fan, because I was wondering about that myself, because I just don't know the reports coming out like that. Yeah. Two more I want to hit on. I'm kind of high on Cam Akers this year. I know people are a little worried about Darrell Henderson taking carries and McVay using our running backs. A lot of people saw the fumbles in the playoffs when he came back. That man came off of a torn Achilles in such a quick turnaround of time and looked the way he did still in the playoffs. I think Cam Akers is going to be in for a real big season. The other one that I want to try to untangle, because I don't really know what to do with, the Chiefs running back situation, man, because I like Edwards-Helaire a lot, but man, he's got so much competition there, and bro, I don't know what to do with him. PPR, maybe I like him on screen passes, but is Rojo going to be real competition there for him? I mean, they have all these other backs, and after you answer that question, let me redirect you so you can talk about it, and then I'll talk about it. What do we do with Baltimore's running backs all coming off of injury?
Yeah, so great question. Great questions here. I can't get involved in the Chiefs' backfield. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and this is more personal. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has hurt me season after season. I was so high on Helaire, man. I was so high on him coming out of college. I drafted him in the first round his rookie year. He came out the gates looking awesome. And then Andy Reid just goes away from him. And Andy Reid doesn't give him the ball as much. And when he does give him the ball, he doesn't really produce that much. And to your question, I think Rojo is going to be a factor. I think they're going to use Rojo a lot, man. And I think they should. He's a talented running back with veteran experience and Super Bowl playoff experience. I like Rojo. I think to your point about PPR, I would take a flyer on Helaire if you can get good value on him. Other than that, I'm not going out of my way to draft him. Your next question is easy for me. J.K. Dobbins, J.K. Dobbins, and J.K. Dobbins. I don't give a damn he came off an injury. I don't care how bad the injury was. I am a J.K. Dobbins fan, and I think he is miles and mountains ahead of those other running backs. Is Gus Edwards, he's good. He's a good insurance policy. J.K. Dobbins is better. I love J.K. Dobbins, man, and I'm going to be someone that takes J.K. Dobbins in a lot of my leagues, banking on him to come back. I loved him at Ohio State. I loved him before he got hurt, and I'm going to continue to love him until he proves me that he's someone that can't bounce back from injury. I don't believe it. I think he does. J.K. Dobbins is a huge plus on mine. So is Cam Akers, by the way.
Yeah, J.K. tore his it was his ACL, I believe. Yeah, he tore that thing up 2 days after I drafted him in like our biggest money league that me and Kayvon are in, and I drafted him like right at the top of the third round. I was on the swing from the first pick. Man, that hurt me bad because I really really liked J.K. last year. I like him a lot this year as well, and I think him and Gus are going to be the 1-2 guy there. J.K. is going to be the obvious leading rusher to me. Outside of Lamar, Lamar might lead the team in rush yards, let's be honest. But J.K. will be right behind, and I think Gus will be a solid standard play if you really need a flex option.
I agree. No doubt about that. But J.K. is my guy, and there's no doubt. So that is your running back talk for fantasy PPR and non-PPR. Let us know some of your sleepers, some of the backfields that you're watching as we head into camp here, some of the running backs that you have your eyes on, maybe someone we didn't mention and we should have. So let us know. Comment on the YouTube page or hit us up at Money Down Pod or at Dumpster Fire Fan at Kayvon_sports. If you're watching on our YouTube page or listening on podcast, stay right there because we are now about to drop a wide receiver fantasy podcast coming up right now. So thank you for tuning in, and we will be right back in just a minute with your wide receiver fantasy talk. We'll talk to you then.